Lianka, you're going to have dinner, I shouted into the side of my son's room with my husband, whose only child is. I didn't dare to call it a word. Leonia was under 2 meters tall, neglected sports, and by his 20s. 2 of them not only got a higher education, but also their own. Business, very serious, well-read, constantly engaged in some kind of projects of my husband, and Sinil was a support. And support in everything, and although Vadik has just turned 42, of which we have been together for a quarter of a century. I already assure Lenny to retire early. Then he always will feed what kind of pension son with a pretend, Vadim replied indignantly. They look at each other. After the birth of Leonie, he did not give us children. How we did not try to get them. Of course, I did not have a pregnancy, sugar, but doctors 5 years after. The birth of a son in one voice. I assure me that I am very much fertile after several years. There are no fruitless attempts to get pregnant. It turned out I decided that to be a mother. One child of mine. The fate of Mom will not be, I have an important meeting, answered the son, leaving his room. He was dressed to the nines, and I admired. He lived as a man while with us, albeit with might and main, and tore out of the parental nest. But the apartment that Leona took out a mortgage, I was not ready yet, but to spend money on. Rent when we ourselves had a decent. I didn't see the point in it's going to be. Ready? Separate housing will take place there. Repairs, then the son will move out. In the meantime, he is for us. Doesn't interfere, and in general, I'm so used to what is next to me. Business staff approached her son with her tongue. Leonka adjusted the collar of his shirt, leaned over to me, smacked my cheek on the... For a second, he pressed me to himself in a bearish, hugs and promising to return before. Midnight, I left the apartment. I looked. My husband will arrive for hours no earlier than at 7. Or even by 8 if we have dinner. The 2 of you don't have to strain too much. Vadik prefers simple dishes to vegetable. Salad and some meat that. Grills can be grilled in minutes. So I have at least a couple of hours on myself, so I thought, intending. Fill your bath and lie in it. About an hour when the doorbell rang. The first thought was that this is probably Leonia, most likely did not even return. I was puzzled to open my own. Keys A apparently ran for an umbrella. Usually, the sun ignored the opportunity. Shelter from the rain, but this morning, the heavens opened and poured out on the rainstorm. When I did open the door, found behind her not Leonid at all. She looked at me attentively and studied. A stranger who is pregnant, flashed by everything. Stupid assumption that this can be the lady of Lenya's heart I knew that he was with. However, to introduce us. With my husband, with his passion, the son did not. Was in a hurry, although it is unlikely that it is she, Leonka. I think he was talking about a girl of 20 years old. In front of me stood a woman well over 30. Hello, I said, having decided. Finally break the silence, which is very, quickly became. Uncomfortable hello, Elizaveta, I, to you has come to call me Glasha, so she knew my name and came to me with, for some purpose I tried to remember. Who could it be, but no ideas on. This count did not appear in my head. You have come to me, I reminded the Glashi. What? She shook her head and suddenly gave out that from which I froze silent. Statue? I don't understand what happened to Vadik, but now he is very distant from me and our elder. My daughter's eyebrows flew up almost. That on the top of her head she meant Vadik, my man with whom I went through, hand in hand 25 years, or was it about, to Skemuse, about whom Galasha. For some reason she showed up. She kept staring at me, put her hand on her neat stomach, stretched her lips into broad simplicity and even. Repulsive, he keeps waiting for your son to. We'll make a deed of gift for that house in the meantime, continued, glancing at me like an electric current of test that house, cozily, for which we paid not so long ago. Mortgage and which was issued to Leonia. And yes, our plans really were. The son had to draw up a deed of gift, give us a house because the mortgage was registered in the name of Leonid, but they paid. Her Vadik and I. But probably you couldn't wait. I would like to talk to him, tell him that once. Everything is over for a long time than he needs. To be responsible for the little daughter and of our future son. I was immersed by the words red-haired I lost my words, but in my mouth, a real desert was formed. It's all over for sugar, Vadim is waiting. When the son makes a deed of gift, but we are officially married to him and do not divorce. We are gathering, Lord, that. And who are you anyway? I squeezed out of myself, already perfectly understanding. What is going on? Vadim gave himself a second family. If the lady doesn't lie, then he doesn't have a. Said was already growing up with a daughter, and soon after had to appear another baby. So, for some reason, Lisa believed it so quickly. Did Vadim ever give you a reason to doubt that he is faithful to you and wants to live side by side with you until the end? Your days, I am your husband's wife, confidently replied Glasha, that which was absolutely nonsense. And she added, we got married a couple of years ago. Vadik is punchy, he is. Was able to finish. My legs stopped holding me with my husband. Marriage was what is called secular. They just signed in the Legislative Assembly and in the church. Neither he nor I would run away and take oaths there. Planned in principle, but I knew. What do you need to present for a wedding? Marriage certificate or existed? Some ways to get around this. Moment, I knew that I would need it. Vadik said that you are very much with him, good friends, and will remain so in the future. I don't mind Lisa, on the contrary, I'm from villages, we appreciate the large family. She began to thrust into my hands some document. I did not immediately understand that. This wedding certificate seems to be. One of the neighbors left the apartment, and, passing by us, I left the common corridor. I understood little about what was happening, and before. My eyes swam with everything, when the look. I picked out the name of the witness, which was also inscribed in a beautiful document. It looks like Easter. It was like ice water. Godfather of our son Loskutov, Yaroslav, and he testified to the sacrament, the wedding that was performed in relation to the Glasha and Vadika. Let's go quietly, I said, turning to my husband's second wife. How horrible it sounded, and the most. It's terrible that this absurdity was. Real, of course I could drive this. Baba to hell and then wait. Arrival to talk about it with him. Incident, but Vadik then will curl up and do everything to herself. She entered the apartment and exhaled, with relief without even hiding it. Probably counted on some kind of another technique after all, even if she thought that. Vadik and his wife are all over. It's all over. Didn't mean that I would accept her with open hugs. You know that we are with Evdokimov, married for 25 years, I asked, pointing to the chair on which she and I got a job of tea and coffee, of course. I didn't offer it, just sit. Let's talk, I'll find out everything I need to know. Yes, I know. Glasha. Vadik nodded. Everything. Says that as soon as Leonia, you're home. Rewrites. Then he will immediately file for divorce. I'm still waiting and waiting for over there for the second time. Approach. She lightly patted herself on the stomach and broke into a smile again, which spoiled her face very much. And how many of your first daughters? I clarified. I'm 15 already, Glasha replied, and I again lurched. For 15 years he lived for 2. Family, wait, something doesn't fit me, I muttered, literally falling on a chair. Opposite to the Glasha, you said that. Got married only a couple of years ago, and what? Before that, they lived in. Sinful saying. It was I who bit my tongue, you can. To think that a stupa is a trip to a church. Altar, which can somehow be leveled. Vadim divorced, lived, and suddenly flooded. Paint Glasha repents, and my parents are all jury, but they are especially kind. The old man laughed. She sighed and took it out of her pocket. The phone opened the photo and handed it to her. I'm the eldest Kaya Varyushka. It's them with Vadik fishing. I automatically took her mobile phone, noting to herself that she is with him in her village. Probably the first woman in the village was. Quite an expensive iPhone model, and with. His screen was looking at me, smiling. Husband who took a teenage girl. Years tea, which was amazing for him. Looks strange, but these details. My husband's double life me. Wonderfully. To sober up my as if to split. And Now I was a completely different Lisa, very different from the one that is completely. Recently, I planned a soirée in the bath and then prepare dinner for husband, and this is us just during the wedding, quickly taking the phone from me and awakened. Gave a ruddy, satisfied Vadim, and next to the. On his left hand was Loskutov, raising a glass to health. I show you young people because I see you obscura, it's clear. I didn't want anything for you. Speak by returning the phone owner. Stared at her face. How did it happen that Evdokimov had been with her for so long? Contacted how he managed to hide, for such a long time, his second family. Although what I'm talking about with him often, business trips he is constantly in. Traveling, he told you that between. It's all over, I clarified, looking at Glau even more closely, her simple face. She nodded and answered. Question to the question, what is it, isn't it? So, of course, it was not so, and certainly our plans for the future could. To envy even the greatest, dreamers we were going to wait. When the sun moves to change, our apartment for 2 one-room apartments both, give it for rent and go to live in. Country house and also build a second one. Housing in the suburbs to receive B. In the prospect of money from rent, well, or to allocate to the young family of Leonia, who he will certainly have, and now it turns out that Vadim was just waiting for. The son will re-register the property to him in order to then break up with me and start. Create a social cell with another, a woman with the one whom he declared his wife in front of. God told me I had to help you. And that Evdokimov has recently been from you. Distanced, what exactly is meant by O. Yes, I was going to dig into VM shit, and to do it with feeling, with sense, arrangement, especially since there is no time for. This has been the case since Glasha made herself more comfortable, and I answered earlier, all the holidays especially. Vadim conducted church visits with us, and here at Varyushki, name day, and he is on business somewhere. I left. I kept saying that now I was with business. Everything went uphill for him, so he had to take bull for horns. She was silent for a while, apparently, realizing that this is not enough for to start thinking like a man. Avoids family responsibilities. Lord, I'm already sitting and thinking about what? Vadik has a full-fledged, quite lawful family at the same time. The circumstance is very strong. Integrate into my life and happened. It's in a matter of minutes. What's next? I will also start coming to Glasha and there, Evdokimov's children, for bread and salt. And then my father asked me to help with the roof. They began to leak. I could not keep it. Laughter. A leaking roof is just a very adequate frame for the fact that Vadik nodded, and generally he forgot and doesn't come to us so often anymore. How? Earlier she had taken a very deep breath and looked at me with anticipation in. Look, I understood to pretend that that's how we get together every evening, company of Evdokimov's wives, and step over. Through this to go further without notifying. About this acquaintance, Vaka, is not you. My life split in 2 further, but it is in my power to do everything, so as not to end up with a nose, and this means to run with a saber on the head. The embrasure is not worth it. Aglaya started me, but the redhead started me. Glafira interrupted. She corrected, and again smiled at her very Glafir's smile after a short pause. I continued, picking up. Words, let's do it with you. Following. In this way, you must understand what is about you. Vadik doesn't give me anything. Told it clearly. She nodded, and that for me all this has become real. Surprise. I will talk to my husband. We will talk to him. Let's discuss the current. Glafira looked at me as a sheep that came of its own free will to slaughter, and I wondered how she could attract Moo. We had a social life with him, intelligent and even intellectual, theater discussion of new productions, classics, and not only trips abroad, where we did not calm down until we examined every museum we did not go, for every interesting excursion, no eye. Of course, I had nothing against people, so to tell from the village of simple young ladies, rural appearance and the same interests, but we were like heaven and land. Leave a phone number, and so far no. Do not tell Vadim that you were, and that our conversation with you. As soon as I visit my husband myself, to talk about you, believe me, he will tell me much more if I will be present alone and not in yours. Glash's company, she beamed vividly. Dictate in colors and life in the village and what they harvest there. I'll give your boy cherries and syrup. Well, like the one that Vadik did last year. I brought it. Glasha did not cut it right away. Having left our apartment with Evdokimov, I listened to her and lost patience and also horror. What she told me. I remembered this. Cherries and syrup and Vadik's lies that I bought twists from the grannies who traded on the roadside, so that's where the gifts come from. They also tinkered with apple compote and even fresh. Green. Bow until you meet, Glaffer, I stretched. Lips in a smile when she is the same, crossed the threshold and found overall, corridor of all the best, and remember that. You don't owe Vadik anything yet. To speak, having said this, I closed behind her. Door and in helplessness leaned her back against the cold metal I needed and urgent. Brainstorming, and I waited for some. Time rushed to the phone and began. Call the person who could have called me, Pomo, and smart niece. Sasha to talk to her, I went to. Office, it was located quite far from. Vadik and I are at home, so. The travel time managed to cover me. Realization what happened in my life and the fact that now everything will go. Radically. Otherwise, I never thought about my own. Age is something that will not give me. The necessary springboard, and 42 years were only. A new stage of life, but the baggage of the past years, I have already imputed a certain understanding of this. How everything will happen next before. I have already foreseen everything with me as I will certainly fall into an emotional pit. When I sit with myself and to realize that my whole life, which 17 years will simply turn into happy memories filled with those feelings that are sung in ballads. But still, memories sit down and tell everything. From and to, Sasha told me she waited while I settled down at her desk, plopped down in front of her, and adjusted her glasses too. Beautiful face, my little niece, who was exactly as dear to me, like my son, and when I look at it, I realized that I was being seized by the terrifying. A sense of security in our surroundings. There is someone else besides Loskotov who knows about the second family. Evdokimov, this someone may well be. Even Sasha, because she is her brother's daughter. Vadika, a woman came to me by the name of Glafira. I began to bite into Sasha's face. With a fixed look she could not. Reacted to the information voiced. Means that she was not aware of it or had. Remarkable acting talents that, until now, I have not been. A woman named Glafira, the niece reminded me when. Pause in our conversation. Puffed yes, I replied, and quickly as, told everything in spirit, about what Glasha said, about what I demonstrated, and the more I talked. The rounder Sasha's eyes became for. Simple lenses, the sharper it became. Understanding what kind of binding am I in? Pleased Lord, Aunt Fox. Yes, what is she? Covered her mouth with her palm and made a torn. Sigh, I remind you that today is not the first. April nervous laughter escaped from her mouth, to which Yala is weak. Put that down. Etsy, I am aware of Sasha and would love to. I believe that this was a prank, and that's it. Photos that Glasha showed me. Photo montage, but I understand that it would be. Stupidly, my niece got up and went to the table, where the decanter of water stood, poured me a glass and served, after which she went to the window and began to think usually in Tanya. Circle. Activities, shot clips, and photo sets. For stocks, what I approached from Fantasia, which was very much appreciated in her. Sphere, and what should we do with it? Asked. She asked in a confused voice. Turning to me, I shrugged my shoulders and looked at her with the eyes of which, usually she did not allow herself from the outside. I must have shouted, "Help, how is it?" The song sings, "I can't get up without your hand," so I didn't understand a little, that's what. How did this Glasha find out your address, that? In general, she wants you to. I sent my husband to her. You say she is on. Blue Eye asked me to do this. Cunning. Under him stood Evdokimov, waiting for hour. Of the verdict, this violent reaction became oil, for my wounded by the previous events. He also paid the mortgage even more than I did, she began quietly, to which Sasha reacted, so I didn't even. I recognized my own. Niece, Aunt Liza, what are you? Intelligence and a desire to think about will play a cruel joke on you. She was so sincerely indignant that I, instantly imbued with these words, do not take any action yet. We need a lawyer, and Leonya knows he asked. She is the questions I tried to ask. Avoid even mentally if the son does not allow. God knows I'll just lie down and I will die to him. So far he has not said anything until late in the evening, busy but I will say, and I will be very strong. Hope that Leonie is a second family. Vadim is not asleep, otherwise it will be my. Okay, damn bro, of course he will be shocked. Shook her head. Sasha, she began to dig into her mobile phone and dictate numbers to me. Phones, I obediently wrote them down, and as a result, I got as many as 3 lawyers with, which I was going to contact tomorrow. In the morning, don't worry, Aunt Liz, everything will be. My niece hugged me well before, how I left her office, and I will leave for now. Brains that we will need to do before the Empire retaliates. Blow, she giggled sadly again, pressing my head to his shoulder alone. I know for sure that we will certainly slope to that. You remember the church itself, where it is. At this moment I felt especially fragile and vulnerable, but allowed herself to be weak only. Several moments, nodded in response to A. Before my eyes, as if the beginnings were taken out, there were words written on Tom, bloody. Testimony before meeting Sasha, and thank you, I left Sasha's office, but wait then. To go home for some time, Pro gave birth. Aimlessly through the streets, Vadik had already returned. He called me, left a message in messengers, but I only replied to my husband that I had to leave urgently on business, and then I made up my mind and wrote to Glafira, because there was one circumstance which now did not allow me to sing. Once I found a simple woman. I found a hairpin in our kitchen, in that the moment my son and I returned from a week-long trip to the sea, in which went without Vadim, then at Leonka's. The first girl had just appeared, and I rightly decided that it was she, dropped this accessory when he brought her to our home, but now that's all. It seemed completely. For others, Glafira, tell me how you. We found out the address where we press, I wrote. I sent my husband's second wife, instantly knowing that I can change my mind about the answer. Came with exactly the same speed as if Glasha did nothing but was waiting for my. So Varyushka and I lived with you a few days while you were on the seas of the bones. Varyusha had to go to Vadik's doctors and settled us in your apartment. I read this and I remember what a horror, what a nightmare on his descent on. The first bench I came across was the burning question, can you, Lisa? For a while, just be silent and to eventually pin my husband to the wall. Yes, so that he no longer, to get away with such a reserve of mental strength and nerves that all you have to do is pray that everything ended as possible. Rather, Lizanka, don't you think we are all? Then they cleaned up after themselves, and the apartment is yours. Nice, cozy, very. Did not talk to Vadik. She is. Scribbles and I had to turn to. His reinforced concrete patience, which melted like blocks of ice under the scorching. A little more, and it will remain instead of. It is only liquid. Puddle, not yet, I think we will do everything together with you, but you don't need to come. I'll write to you when. Will. Free, thank you. By discarding the desire to delete all these messages and block the caller. Glafira, I got up from the bench and fell. Home for the first time in my life. Desperately did not want to go there. Return when I went into the hallway. It turned out that Vadim was taking a shower. A stupid thought flashed through my mind if he was alone there. And what if he distanced himself from the Glasha then? Could well turn his attention to some young lady she's still, and she is able to give birth to children and brighten up his mature years. This thought did not seem to me viable in recent years with us. The husband was a kind of 100th honey, the month when the marital duty was fulfilled. 5 times a week, yes, and name him. It was the word duty that did not turn the tongue. And another thought came to my mind now. If Evdokimov recently dropped a phrase about the fact that we would have another baby now, then I. Stupidity did not pay attention to her. Some kind of, and now the brain for these words, clung to them and began to think them over. Vadim told me these things when he had. A baby was about to appear from. Glashi spoke knowing two things. The other, a woman is about to give birth to a son, and I will not. I could conceive no matter how hard we tried. About Lizanka, and I'm already a little federal. I didn't file a search, Vadim said, entering, to our bedroom where I knelt on the edge. Bed and sat staring at the floor. Looking up at him, I pulled on Lee. I answered the smile of action, getting up evasively, and starting to change clothes, and what are these things? Late at night and even without a husband. Evdokimov, coming up from behind, embraced, pulled me with his hands to the wet after. Bath procedures, body just business meeting new client. Wants me to come up with blinds for a very. I was the first to select a non-standard window. Came to mind throwing off my husband's hands. Turned to him and continued to lie. Sorry, please, he blew my whole brain out. But maybe a peep from him is a couple of ideas for. To put the finishing touches on the Lyanka's house, I said this on purpose. To see your husband's reaction now. When she stands before me. Illuminated by those reflections penetrated. Through a certain prism of events. Perhaps I will make new ones for myself. Conclusions of the soon-to-be in-the-box house. Remind me. Threw his hands behind his head and began to watch me, then suddenly sniffed and asked, Listen, don't you think that we have? I smell strange at home, stopped, put on a dressing gown, and raised an eyebrow. Did he really feel? Fragrance, rural, Chanel number, and like. It's funny, if it's about the spirits of the Glasha, then this one. The story pulls on a new anecdote prill husband. Home, and his wife smells of his own. I don't think I'm a mistress, I pretended. A what? Sniffed as if he was trying to figure something out of the. Then he smiled relaxedly and covered. Eyes yes, no, it seemed. He answered as follows. You won't join me, Leonya, I think. Today it will be late, Vadim clapped. Next to me with the palm of my hand, what do I? Negatively sank. Had no pro. Changed to come up with blinds for this. Damn window, I lied easily again, and... Grabbing her notepads, the laptop left the bedroom to wait in the kitchen. The arrival of his son, Leonya, as promised, came. Before midnight when I heard from the bedroom. Evdokimov's snoring I exhaled from. Relief now he is not from the cannon. Wake up so Leonid and I can. Calmly discuss everything, although just in. The ability to talk about it without emotion. I was very doubtful. Len needs to judge something, I said to my son, in a loud whisper as soon as he appeared in the hallway. Let's go to the black. Stairs. The son knitted his eyebrows on the bridge of his nose and was very puzzled by the way I behaved and where I called him, but he fulfilled my request. And, as soon as we were in transition, balcony, I took and gave Leona everything. I tried to speak briefly and clearly without. Of the color that is in itself, asked to be. Language today, I had a woman on. Name, she's your father's second wife, he's with her. She gave birth to Povin in some village. He has a daughter 15 years ago and now bears his son to you about it. Knows something in the last words. My voice faltered, but before I could. I would have said them. I have already understood what I was the most important thing in the established. Circumstances, Lyanka did not know anything. I knew, but I believed me, as they say, with. First TX notes he turned pale VL in Naya, and he swayed and grabbed his hands to the iron railing, breathed heavily and over the garden. I digest what I heard, and then lo, tilted his head and roared, I will kill him. Quieter, quieter, I begged, getting up so that. Prevent your son from rushing back to the apartment, where he would pounce on his sleeping father and, what good was he later imprisoned under the article? E105 while your daddy doesn't know I'm. I found out about his second family. Look, that made me want to fall through the ground as if it were not. Evdokimov was the last. Bastard, eh? Just don't say that you will forgive him and you will live with him, Mom. Tell me that this is not. Thus he prayed in the words of his son. such a resentment that in my chest immediately was born and burned with a bright flame. A sense of sharpness. Gratitude, of course. This is not the case. I did not. I'll stay with him after I found out the knife. Facts before we sit down with him and I will post everything that I have been told about. Glafira pausing me. I added tomorrow, for example. I plan to. Go to the church that your dad is. Married another and find out how. In general, they allowed such blasphemy to me. I shuddered from what feelings. It was this fact that Vadim evoked in me. Was married times. Leonia asked me as much as possible. He has already pulled himself together, and now I am. Was not afraid of murder, only near. There was a barely noticeable crease in my son's mouth. I suspected that she was no longer. We'll go away, and tomorrow, of course, I'm going with. By you, he said before I began to. My sad story I smiled with. Relief, and began the narration of as if snow had arrived on my head. Glasha, and what she practically told me, at breakfast, which my husband and I spent. The two of them had to restrain themselves so as not to. God forbid I do not allow myself some phrase, or a hint by which Evdokimov would do something. Alyanka realized that she was so gloomy from the very. In the morning muttered to me that you had left, Vadim said thoughtfully while she ate hastily in order to be in time for that. The moment when my son comes for me immediately. When he woke up, he said he had. There is a small matter, but he counts on. Manage it in half an hour. And when we agreed to meet at He left the next entrance without telling his father. Pears. The words yes, it seems that he had a fight with his girl. I lied, mentally asking Eulenia. Do not pay attention to forgiveness for this lie. Young. Green, I began to put the dirty dishes into the typewriter when Evdokimov dropped it as if I would even casually. Fox, I'll need to spend 3 days in the business trip to leave. We have nothing to do. There are no joint ones yet. What did it cost me not to freeze with a mug on the advantage and not show your reaction? What kind of feelings were born in the soul from? They knew only what my husband said. Heaven, there is no work, and of course go. As usual, I let go with a light heart. Vadim frowned, and I immediately mentally slapped myself, however. It turned out that Evdokimov was puzzled at all, not mine, with the words, listen, Anya is planning a document there. To conduct a gift transaction, I asked. What caused me to have an incredible flash? Anger, of course, nodded in response, and immediately an eye came into my head. Interesting cape, as she plans to add, confidently, and when Vadik took off his shoes. I closed the car and said goodbye, ran to meet me, and quickly, until I was. I myself was not covered with the desire to kill. From the kitchen and then from the apartment. It turned out that Lenya's work turned out to be a cute girl whose name was Zhenya, blonde with huge blue eyes, who smiled at me embarrassedly with back seat and asked Elizabeth, Andreevna, you won't mind if I'm with? I'll go to Yulenchik has such a cool plan. I didn't know what the plan was, but I hoped that it was not for the capture. Of course I don't mind, Zhenya replied. Just jump into the front seat and I'm all ready. Here. There was no need to ask the girlfriend for a son twice. She deftly moved forward and settling in her place, I closed my eyes. When Leonia tore the car off and I drove out of the yard a little, take a nap trying to get rid of. Nervous tension that possessed me, relentlessly when we got to that. Church itself, I was covered with a simple realization. Here is that village inn. My husband's second family lived an inn, who he rides his own. And he will go once more, literally, too. We decided to play the role of the groom and brides who want to get married, Leonia said to me when we approached the beautiful oak doors with a characteristic symbols, and let him just say that they will not marry. Without a marriage certificate, she added. Zhenya, I belatedly realized that my son told his girlfriend all the unpleasant truth about that filth in which Evdokimov had immersed me, but in general, this was quite justified. Go inside actors, big and small. I shook my head, glad that the guys went with me, and I didn't. You will have to go through it alone. We entered the church, where Eugene immediately, I was obliged to wear a skirt. She did not protest, and in the meantime she has found the given garment under the comments of my son. I walked around the church, and she looked around. She was small, but very cozy, and apparently there is money for that. To put it in order, the parishioners did not. Finally, the priest came out to us with, to whom they planned to talk. Young, we are here to get married. We want to, said Lenya, holding her wives under the. I brought my elbow and my mother with me, so that you don't think that my intentions. Frivolous only here. There is no marriage certificate, and probably we won't sign. I was enthusiastically composing. On the way, son, I involuntarily admired him, and Evgenia, they were a very beautiful couple. So even when I look at them, the thought flashed through my mind that I would be glad to visit my son's wedding, of course, the real one. But I had no time for these reflections. When the priest is strict and confident, I answered the wedding in this case. Impossible at first go and sign. You can quietly and modestly, and then show me the testimony, and then I will. Right. I couldn't stand the first one until Lenya. I was choosing my words. I came closer and said strangely, Afistraho, you a couple of years ago, P. although they officially married father transferred to me the dark. A look in which, as it seemed to me, discontent flared up, and I also realized that he immediately understood who exactly he was talking about. The case is different there, he said in response. Vadim and his wife have not lived for a long time, yes, and he helped the church very financially, saw a new one, and he picked up the new one, instructive index finger up, and I could not restrain myself and fell from my lips. Moan from where Vadik has such huge money. How did it happen that the husband scattered huge sums around? Our family needed them first, earn then hide, and only after, to put into action in the case with which he studied to get the opportunity to marry. Glafira, that is, if we lie down financially. To your church, then we will also be allowed. Circumvent the rules of pouring. The sun changed almost before our eyes. I even looked at each other with bewilderment. He suddenly began to exude such indignation that it was impossible not to notice him including in physical manifestation. Jaws clenched, wings of the nose became. And it was as if I had been gutted. Externally and internally, I became some kind of a shell that lived, but by which took away a significant part. No cut off. Father, but I know well he is a man. Reliable said that he was not in the sin of the family. Glafir's and Vadim, after all, the wife of her husband is Glashino. With him lives feeling that Leonia is going to. Tell the priest that's it. I took my son under the elbow and squeezed it, making it clear that there was no point in starting. I do not prove the real picture of things. I saw no Vadik. Will find out today that we were here and what we told the priest about. The fact that Evdokimov's wife is not only with him, Jit, but also Regu. In our plans, it is only. Thank you, I thanked the priest. We probably. Let's go. I dreamed now of only one thing. Get in the car and leave this damn village so that nothing else would be around. Reminded me of what a web of lies I was in. I've for so many years, but here's the trouble. Even if you remove the scenery from sight, nothing will disappear from your memory. Behind on and then come. They will marry. They will go so here and baptized. Here we have good, yes, and honest, Leonia muttered, to which I only crookedly smiled, going out into the fresh air. He was crystal clear as you feel, full chest as if it could be drunk. But it seemed to me that from this very air, next to the city, we drove back to the city in full silence. Leonia drove the car with concentration, and I sat looking out the window and was afraid. To think that the depth of betrayal, husband is much more bottomless than seemed at first when we parked at the entrance. Jenny, she turned to me and began to speak with such fervor that it immediately became. Clearly the girl L took it very close. All this situation, Elizaveta Andreevna, we do not. Let's leave everything as it is, she said. Evgenia, my dad, he was a deputy in the past. Of course, but he still has connections. We will attract all, I assure you, and we can give all this to the answer. Such publicity that heads will roll to you. I swear I put my hand on Zhenya's wrist, and the sleigh shredded his soul to shreds. Cry from what I understood next to me. There are those who are on my side who are ready for, even if I don't have to. Remains. It was so. Valuable, Zhenechka, thank you very much, but if publicity is made, then not. Now, Leonia. She turned her gaze to her son, you. I have an idea of what to do next. Let me think it over myself, and then that's it. Let's get together and discuss it well. Thank you, my good ones, for being with me. Thank you together, I could not restrain myself and out of sight. Tears rolled down, I felt so bitter. It's unbearably offensive, but I'm strong and I will definitely cope. Mom, don't thank me, what? Said Lenya. Not without surprise in the voice, we are one family. I'm almost like your daughter-in-law. Provided he smiled, and Xenia burst into tears. They are good in paint, they are still a beautiful couple, and it is clear that each other has a feeling of pity, just about which we. Vadim hinted at the sun. It passed here. So that's it. I'll go walk to the house. I told the guys, to which they looked at each other. I want to clear my head with doubt and you, by their deeds. I got out of the car, and my son, having done the same, he came up to me, peered into my face, looking for something on it, and I realized that he is very strong. Len is worried. Everything will be fine, I assured my son, after which he briefly, hugging her, she ordered herself. Hold on does not need to be made of. More tragedies, everything, and without that, there is nowhere worse than the Ama, really. We will stand and we will cope if anything, call right away, she said. Leonia, to which I nodded in agreement, and walked along the sidewalk where the eyes look. Restrain myself and not go to Sashka with which we would sit down and discuss everything on. Fresh traces failed, and there was no point in digesting everything in. Alone, because when I dialed the number niece and I heard that she herself had already, I was thinking of coming to me, I decided that I needed. Go to her office when I got there. Sashka, she was in the state of extreme agitation was transmitted. I just had to voice how we, the three of us today, went to church, and what they found out there, Sasha even hung up. A while. Aunt Fox and the fact that Uncle Vadik then. My dad on credit just took a lot. A couple of years ago, and then I got into loans. To give this money thou knowest he. After all, the son has already paid for that major transaction. I see a spore. I didn't settle on the floor. How many more news to me? And most importantly, why didn't they come to my life in time, clasping my head in my hands? I tried to figure out what to do with these. Cheerful news to go to Vadik's brother and demand answers from him to everything. Questions are not the best idea. You need to try it somehow. Turn off all emotions, although how is it? I don't. I thought no, Sasha replied in confusion. The tribe already understood everything without words. I didn't know about it, and I can't imagine it. What did he pay there, and to whom? Vadim. Sashka sat down next to me and shook her head in contrition. It is clear why then Dad and Uncle Vadik. They talked about it in a low voice I accidentally heard and did not attach much importance to right away. I remembered now there is no sense. The Supreme Court did not have to worry about this. Has already happened. T.T. Fox, listen. I don't want you. Cheat, but you should find out before how you will divide in court. Uncle Vadik has debts too, are subject to division even if you knew about it. At least no, but to prove that it is on this amount went to the roof, well, it will be necessary. Try, although maybe the parents of the Glasha and will take your side in this matter, and everything will be told well, she will tell her. Sasha herself tried at least something to come up with quite reasonable first look of things, and I was so strong. I am grateful to her because I myself do not at all. I understood what exactly to do next. And in what order is the lawyer, this is clear. But to begin with, you need to make sure that to hit Evdokimov with the most unexpected. In a way, yes, I'll find out everything, of course, I answered hoarsely, but for now I need something to turn together with his son through. For a few moments, my niece and I immersed ourselves in the discussion that I planned to do it in the foreseeable future. Vadik, Vadyusha, you will have a soup with kvass, or just do it for kefir. Fresh removed, not yet sour, turned to Evdokimov Glafira when he, lounging in an armchair standing on the terrace, At home, he drank cognac and looked into the distance. Cognac, of course, did not knit with Okroshka in his.
Well, there is no way, but herein. Village could afford a lot. From what was Moviton
In the city. This is Vadima at one time in this, shtetl, and in this family, and I was attracted by freedom in relationships and thoughts. Statements, and also in the way he behaves, felt next to ordinary people, parents of the Glasha and with her, of course, from the moment his. The car broke down near their house, and I had to look for help it was already without. Is 16 years old, and during this time he has a lot. Brought both to their life and to the comfort of his. But there is only one thing left. He lived unchanged here in this village. My best life, which, by the way, wouldn't be so full if it weren't for. There was also a second side. Existence of Evdokimov, namely the one where, was intelligent, possessing a sharp intelligence and excellent taste of Lisa his, a real wife who will remain so until the end of their days, and although Glasha is somewhat. Once I talked to him about what they needed. To be together 100% in Vika was possible. Tak, and one is secular, the other is ecclesiastical. Perfect, not soup Glasha call things. By its own names it. Okroshka Glafira is funny to wrinkle the look that I was embarrassed and gave out I know that you don't. I like all this, let there be soup. She asked, by the way, there is a Varyuka. I asked if he could do it for his day. Birth with girlfriends to stay in Kaya. Sami celebrated the holiday all around, she added. She was a clear knack that its time was from withdrawing money to barbarians and a few other girls from village she knew on her birthday on her daughter. Evdokimov spared no expense, and not. It cost him so much more. He spent more money to provide for the parents of the Glasha and his wife with everything you need. Well, how do you say nah? Such a garden without cultivators, lawn mowers, and other tools, eh? In winter, Glafira's dad is not young, but that's it. Shovel mahal to clear the snowdrift. But now I can't get enough of it. Was the words what a thrill Evdokimov received when Mom and Dad went to the Glashas, on tiptoe if their son-in-law deigned. Rest, and at the table he got best. I have already said that Vadim can, delivery, 10 skin, let the prepayment go. We'll pay, and then we'll figure out how much more. They need to. Add while he was translating the voiced. Amount Glasha was standing next to her. The rounded figure fell every now and then, in the field of his vision of the second child in the second family. Evdokimov did not want it. His son had enough of everything. From Lisa and the daughter from Glafira, but she, somehow, managed to fly in, although Vadik did everything, with caution and sense. Vadim's belly began to loom. It began to turn away from her, although before. Now my wife, whom I called so, before God he wanted, notwithstanding the fact that she was, frankly, not at all in his taste, but maybe in this wing. The reason threw everything away, he said, translating. Varya money and Okroshka will be fresh. Kefir, he waited until Glafira happily. Smiling, let's sit down on the bottom of the knee. He will hug her by the neck and kick thank you in. Lately, it seems. I calmed down about the reason why. I took out his brain, the more his stomach grew. The more often Vadik decided that Glasha understood he will continue to live as it is convenient for him. And that's it. Period? He asked when he saw on the... His wife's face flashed with something strange, expression from which he... I'm on my guard. There's nothing. She shook. Head and getting up, she went to cover the table, and he remained, not knowing what at all. Soon he will face the biggest test in the life. So the plan was drawn up and given that. Glafira called me and invited me. Take part in the celebration of the day. The birth of their daughters with Evdokimov was going as well as possible. Or rather, I can't call luck an infidelity of my husband. Of course, but here is the nearest. Considered events exclusively as a chance to do everything for yourself quickly, although with a mountain of spent nerves. Glasha will be at the holiday once you say that Vadik is about nothing and not. Knows, I replied to Evdokimov's second wife. But I have a request. Could you come with me? Meet before and talk. Before I let my husband go to you with an easy. In my heart, I'd like something. Find out I physically felt how. Glasha is so inspired by what he hears that the happiness she experienced was transmitted to me only at the same time, transformed into something so disgusting thing that made me sick. Having agreed with Glafira that I'll meet you every other hour on neutral territory, I cut off the connection and grim. I looked at the calendar with these nervous worries. I completely forgot that. I should have already started. Critical days, and at the moment, they have already. Lag, it was time to concentrate on mental health and the body, signaling. And all these things said the son as he entered. To me, after a short knock, I looked at Lyonya and he frowned. You're very pale, said. Coming closer, maybe we will endure everything and rest. I shook my head to pull it off. Inevitable and prolong the fire from which my whole body ached as if I didn't. I wished everything then, Lenya, I'm already at work. She said, I will finish the project and in vacation for a while. The son stood looking at me doubtfully, but then nodded, and I went out and I got up and reluctantly began to meet with Glasha and our meeting with her. I needed the conversation for I wanted to ask a certain goal, Glafi, about her life with Evdokimov I planned this conversation. Right down, Evdokimov's second wife arrived. She was there before me, so inspired by the fact that I was preparing to hand her her own husband. This feeling permeated her every glance. Each, and I thought that only at the bottom. Varyushka's birthday, I'll see you, she said, when I sat down. On the contrary, we chose to meet, a small cafe not far of the village where Glafira lived with her family. And where did he visit on a business trip? Evdokimov. Well, I decided that we are now. Just chat a little, and at the holiday. I don't think there will be time for that, she replied. I called for the help of all the singing, waiting for Glasha to make an order for me. Tried to focus me again. I began to feel nauseous, so I didn't plan to eat, and limited herself to a cup of herbal tea. Tell me then, I will tell you my preparations. I at least spoke fraternally to Glafira. When the waiter left, Mom and I, special composing Vadik, said that, you're not very feminine anymore, like a man. You were even planning a child. Came out, so I'll give you some herbs still. You'll have time. She smiled, and me, sick from her spring of this. An unpleasant face from the fact that I am. The unpleasant truth about my husband was. We will discuss it later. I wanted to ask you to tell me, how are you doing with Evdokimov's life stems from you. You live fully as one family. But Vadim, after all, a lot of work is not so much. Often the following information went under the record of the World Cup was known. I didn't necessarily suspect that she maybe try to hide something and somewhere, to lie, but judging by the with which enthusiasm Glafira became. Tell nothing, this fool even? I noticed it not often. Sometimes I would like to, of course, so that everything was different, but when we arrive, we live soul to soul. Vadik does a lot of things around the house in our lodges. All of myself and also my father and mother. Constantly helps the equipment in their house. Buys a new generator, I kept saying. Well, why, Vad, you're all the new wiring. Made repairs. To bang they in the darkness do not. Sat and brought drinks, and Glasha went to the. For a few moments I was carried away by the fact that sweeten your hot chocolate, which, without that, for some reason, he must have been. I thought of just that, although I was in the last thing to do was, I am interested in what eats there and in what form. My second wife. My husband is also constantly taught by Vadik. To everyone, she said, and I choked. A sip of tea is waiting for me now, a short or maybe not so much excursion into the intimate life of the husband, and speak so that it may be correct, and all sorts of different things will be born now. We can get stronger in the house, that new one of yours. Let's get over. Vadik said that you would be offered your. Half of it can be bought out or maybe not. We will need housing to share. As a family, she laughed loudly and merrily. The surrealism of what is happening has become. Off the scale, not only nerves, but also what can be added to the process, and for some reason it was not. Made me leave for you. Why only? Now I decided that it's time for Evdokimov. I asked those to take responsibility. Questions that were answered in general are not so important, but I wanted them. To hear so Vadik told me, you wife. The second, and there I have a son to raise him. I need to put him on his feet. Well, now I have. You, Leonya, an adult? Yes, and donations are coming soon. So it's time for my chick from. Of your nest, she began to fly away again, laughing heartily, and she did it. So sincere that I did not doubt. In her mood, I finally understood. I urgently need to gather everything into a fist. I was so exhausted that, to resist the rural lot of a pregnant woman, Glafiri, it will be very, very difficult for me, and I don't lose the rights. I have a day X when Lenya and I arrived, on the feast of life, on the occasion of the onset of. Varvara's birthday has come quite. Evdokimov had just left for business trip, but in fact he moved to a few days in his Zagorodnoye Mi. Varia, according to Glasha, noted 15th birthday in a rented cafe. Vadim, and this meant that the witness was not the most enjoyable seen teen girl. It won't be like I am strong. I was worried about someone else's child, but anyway, I was. We arrived more calmly a little later when the guests have already gathered at the table. I imagined this holiday as something like a small family drinking party, and I was not mistaken when we entered the house from. The premises were rollicking. Leonya's voice, which was whiter than chalk, squeezed. My jaw went to the sound, but I was stopped. I needed a little. The son was waiting to catch his breath in complete silence. When I come to my senses, and I couldn't, to get together because I already understood who is present at this feast, in addition to Evdokimov and Loskutov, to the presence of which I was morally ready. My son looked at me with regret, and by anger the first was called, support my Issa, penitent much more, and then I nodded, and we entered the spacious kitchen. As soon as we appeared on the threshold, someone else's holiday conversation. What has calmed down? Vadim began, jumping up from. Lord, Lisa, Lenya, squeaked. Mother-in-law, whose eyes were huge. How 2 saucers of data were mine here. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were sitting under the roof of someone else's house and celebrated a birthday, granddaughters, and how to cope with emotions when the extent of my shock has become enormous. I have not presented good afternoon. We were invited to celebrate my sister's birthday. Lenya began. He turned to me and I. Calling on the help of the amazing heaven. Voice. My daughter and I have a gift for you. Taking a copy of the deed of gift from my purse, She came up and put it in front of her husband, who was so amazed that he was sitting, without moving, white as a canvas. Stone, that house was registered for me the other day. Who was to be our me now? Its sole owner, congratulations. Happy holiday to you, and with the fact that you, incompetently, not only his family, but also real estate, and I assure you it will be the first in a series of. What will I deprive of Thea? The silence that reigned at the table was. Everyone was looking at me, ringing. Someone is confused with anger, and someone even with admiration, all except Evdokimov, rested his heavy gaze on the copy. Lenya and I could go to donation transaction after divorce can be, and what good would it have been for us to stretch years, and now the chances are that he will take away the house almost not. Was Lisa, what are you saying? Why? You call Vadik, and why is the whole? This circus jumped up to Evdokimov by Glasha, on whose face was written the most complete, bewildered, seasoned with readiness, fighting for her own as if she were a lioness, protecting the NWO, offspring, and who even gave up the woman. Gee, I looked at him. It was definitely the same father of Glafira they are on the face. Just a copy of Lenya froze with his whole body and clenched his fists, but before he would rush. I have interceded for me, replied. It was the woman who pointed to the Glauso. This is my husband's mistress. I don't know how. There was no time for your patronymic name. Get acquainted, but this is a woman who developed legs compression, the knowledge that he has been married for decades. Sighs that followed mine. With a fiery speech he interrupted this roar. The old man slammed his fist on the table and began. His eyes will rise from their place. bloodshot and nostrils angrily. She is his wife before God, he barked at Tika with his finger. Daughter, she, as her mother rightly said, and eat minted coldly falsely, churched as I understand it, to remind you. Words of the Apostle Paul, all power is from God. Therefore, Mom and Dad, who, signed in the authorities, announced, myself husband and wife in front of. To the Almighty he said such things, hearing, which I stood mentally rosin in my mouth. Leonia has never been interested in such a thing, to quote the apostles, and even more so, and, apparently, I've prepared myself with the priest. I'll discuss it. Glasha's father answered, but the fervor of his words noticeably decreased. And it's time to let you go to her Evdokimov, I said, stepping back a little. I wanted to, for fresh air, because in my head. The fog floated, the nausea became. Nestum, or if we do, then the apartment is ours. We'll go to me. I made a pause for one, looked around. All those present to whom I have. There was only one acute sense, dislike, each of them knew that. Evdokimov is married, but they instilled him in this house as the husband of the devil's Glasha, who stood now looking at me with fierce malice. At least she was silent. Bread, you said that Kim has not been. Together, and it's all over for us, said. I'm calm, so it's not true when I distance myself from you, forgive the reason. I don't know that in bed we started. Honey, month, never my past beat. Would allow say such things in public. Never until now, probably. And there is a moral fall from which, then it is very difficult to get out and again. To be on the surfaces, it's all you. You speak in such a way as to take revenge on me, Glasha shrieked, who in a moment lost all her appearance, her face. She became furiously distorted, to look around as if she was looking for, through the eyes of one who could refute, said, That's enough, Vadim suddenly said. Getting up from the place is an amazing thing, but the rest, except for Leonia and me, suddenly. They fell silent and froze as soon as they looked. On Evdokimov, he was the only one who could, with a wave of a magic wand, return the aircraft to sleep where neither me nor Lenny, where the holiday will go its own. Enough, yes, I agreed, and I turned to my son. We walked. I was getting worse and worse. It was necessary to get into the air where there was the stench of the rot in which we all go to the left. We swam, and where there was no smell of garlic, alcohol, and then, when we found ourselves on the street, it turned out that Vadik and Glasha followed. Follow me. Lenny, Liza, wait, my husband called out to me, and when I turned around, something happened that I didn't. Even I was expecting it myself. I turned right, to some flower bed where the shadows of the couple are stunted. Unfortunate. Petunia, something I'm not feeling well. I exhaled to straighten, hope this is not the consequence of that sex marathon that you arranged for me. Vadik, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed how Glafira, blacker again in all appearance, but I did not. Before her, because on the face of Evdokimov, suddenly the feeling that was there, completely inappropriate and strangely spicy, Nadezhda, he longed for me too. I really turned out to be pregnant. Could have sworn it to anyone, but there was bad news for Vadim even, if it turns out that after so many years. Fruitless attempts are so inappropriate. There was no question of. To preserve this fruit of bitter love to go. Can't. I have always been against children. They got rid of it as unnecessary garbage. But Evdokimov managed to do it in a matter of days, to reshape in me the attitudes that were sown in with. Lisa is born. Let's talk together. And in another place, he began, but Glasha entered the rage. Vadik. What is she carrying, and I am to her? I went in a godly way to cut it. This proud knot of the Gorv automatically, Leonia prompted, to which she restrained herself in order to not burst out laughing. You've been with your wife for a long time. You don't live, and you altogether are cliches. I didn't think that this snake was behind my back like this. She will do so sincerely indignant. The fact that I took some steps to prevent yourself from being robbed to the bone and to deceive your own husband that is unknown. The second wife was on her face. My husband thought that it was me. I act dishonestly and not. Vadim, choose an expression, the son barked. They did not ask, the snotty ones besieged him. Glafira and the degree of my anger to the side. This woman increased sharply, but I definitely don't stoop to rural scraps. Planned, it was enough, and how. Everything was happening at the moment. Why should we talk together and in? Elsewhere, I asked Vadim, I suggest you choose in front of everyone. Participants in the events, who will you be next? Live. I physically felt Evdokimov, the confusion that came from Lenya. He was coming here with a completely different. I am in the mood too, of course, but I don't. Could deny herself a little feminine. Of pleasure turning to Leona, with a glance, she made it clear to him that it was. Pretend what the son to repeat to. Twice it was unnecessary to ask. The question of not all mothers can wait for more, and my sister Jaws Evdokimova planned to protect their daughter from each other. He was ready for Varvar even at a price, spoiled relationships with. Enough, son, Vadik strained about which. You say, Lisa, do you really think? That for so many years of life with you I did not. Recognized his own. What a wife, I grunted. Evdokimov closed his eyes, then turned, and, if I really said it, I didn't suspect anything because our life with her was full. I lied to you when I was married. Both of them should have seen Glafira's face in. This moment, if I were simple, spectator of this scene, I would perhaps even. It would have been a pity for the poor man, she turned white as. Canvas and became, felt and put the second one on her stomach. God forbid that he will give birth prematurely and in. Daki has enough brains to blame everything. Me and Leonia. Let's end this farce tiredly. I turn to Vadim. Glasha, I understand that the present has happened to you today. Discovery, but I'm sure you'll survive it. For your goal has been achieved by Evdokimov by you, although clearly a little out of the way. Which you were counting on, well, if so, it was important to take the man in your worth. Dare you, Vadim? To rinse it turned to Leona. Let's go home, it's quite stuffy here. My son nodded and gave me his hand. Went away from this place where, our past life and Evdokimov together with, Glasha remained, and probably that's it now, was placed in those places where and should have been in the, during which they stole my own life when we came home, all that. I had the strength to go to bed and was able to undress and fall into the bed where he began to take care of me. Leonia covered him with a blanket, took the phone and turned it off, brought some water, and before to leave asked, Quietly, Mom, and you can really be. I was pregnant. I closed my eyes and shook. Just not this topic. Please, if anything, don't worry, and we will feed the child, my son told me, and left. Rheum in my lips sprang out of my mouth. My wife, of course, was very lucky with Leonia, and Vadim and I managed to be brought up. Beautiful. I slept the rest of the day and this night without dreams, and when I got up in the morning, I felt completely different. I even forgot about nausea, completely, but I did not hope for a chance. I signed up for the near future at the clinic. To her doctor and went to. I wanted to take a job with something that was. The way to switch all thoughts there is not. Will revolve around Vadik and Glasha. For nothing that, in any case, I will have to. Subsequently, over and over again, immerse yourself in. After all, this topic is ahead of us. Inevitable processes in the form of divorce. Section. Property until dinner I managed to. Do not think about betrayal at all. Evdokimov, which was facilitated by the new. The most interesting project, however, the other side. A life I'd rather forget. Manifested itself forever in the form of Vadim during my lunch. Break. Evdokimov came to my office, tumbled into the office without knocking, and said to A, Now let's go and talk. Normally, the first impulse was simply to put him to hell and forbid him to approach me or Lena even on. Vadim was within cannon range. Angry, I saw it with the naked eye. Only aggression should have been directed to him. Not at all. Me on a scale from 1 to 5, how many seconds will my, so as not to start yelling obscenities at. The whole office was inquired, and I am closing. Laptop me became. Shakes, but it seems that I have already begun to. With the thought that Evdokimov was his, actions was able to create from, anyone completely different, man Lisa to us in any case. We will have to say we can't. Just take and shove the cat's undertail. How many years a happy marriage with pressure? Tails. 5 to the corner von Chi and got a job on NMI. Could just get up and leave the office. But I suspected that later I will have to run away from my husband as from. Fire, you said that your business trip will last longer or Glasha is already. Calm down, spinning in the chair. I clarified in an even tone, so I assure you. You, Vadik, I'm also in a state. Boa constrictor with me has absolutely nothing to talk about. We will talk, and we will talk all the conversations, to be carried out in the presence of lawyers. With Evdokimov they were baptized. Felt at the moment my husband did not. I knew, and I did not want this knowledge, but judging. In his eyes the emotions inside him were bubbling. Serious, you've already been to the doctor. After. Pauses, Vadim suddenly asked. I even choked on the following phrase, which I came up with it in order to get rid of. Company. It's not your husband's business. Evdokimov has your. Wives before God will soon have a belly against us. This is what you should be talking about. Think. I got up from my desk and stood. Stacked documents in even stacks. They did not need it at all. Usually I made sketches by hand for a minute, which I had lying here and there, and today, as if responding to my inner, condition sheets of drawn paper were in the most complete. Chaos you can be pregnant with Lisa with, the husband said with pressure, getting up from the sofa, and what does it change? I shook. Shoulders, as for me, nothing. I definitely won't. You should have understood. For the years I have lived, that my mind, the Lord did not. Deprived Vadim came closer, and, stopping half a meter away, he began to drill. Me. With a glance, I have a say in everything that will concern my child, he said, peremptory. Tone in response I could not restrain myself from throwing back. Head and became sonorous. Laughing, this laughter is still artificial ism. She reflected all my. You have feelings only with the correction if. At this point we will be talking about offspring from Glafra and certainly not from. Taking advantage of the opportunity, move away from Evdokimov the first. I went to the rack where I put it. I could not take the folder with sketches in any way. What are we talking about, and what kind of? The goal came to me. Husband, forgive me for what I did. I'm sorry. I'm very pro. Alasha, she knows what is the most important thing for me. The main thing is you and Leonya and me again. Began to laugh because more. I have never heard nonsense in my life. How long has it been since she? I found out this at the moment when. You spent a lot of money on church needs, so that the priest would take upon himself a huge sin, and Evdokimov, or at the moment when you were weaving. She is not talking about the fact that you and I have not been. Together and I have another, and is it really a bonk product? Believe that a man can live with. Unloved in order to grow and to teach my son, I snorted. Glasha is not at all. It's just that the whole immediately stood up for the filthy one. Honor of the second wife of the Evdokims, she. Of course not as educated as you, but very kind and sincere. I measured my husband, with such a look from which he immediately, to be embarrassed. I definitely don't talk about the merits of Glafi. So go to the Nev. Then what if I shew the child we, by some miracle our family conceived, will continue to exist in the same way as before? I really felt suddenly. It is very interesting how Vadim sees the future. After all, in my understanding, everything was. Meet with crystal clear and simple. Lawyers discuss in their presence. Division of property debts of Evdokimov, which I hoped he would not. We are discussing compensation for me and my son from his share in our apartment. To close all those financial holes, what he has done in the family budget over the years, marriage, and at this point we part ways in life. Forever, but it seems that my husband had completely different ideas about how he wants to continue our relationship. I really hope for your. Lisa Prudence, I'm not just like that. I asked if we had another one. A child, because in recent months you have been drinking special. Herbs for women's health I put to you. Them in your herbal tea, that you. I brought it with. Yuga, while I was shocked, looked at a person in whom she did not recognize the one with. Vadim continued to live for so many years. Surprise me with your idiocy. I really wanted you and me to have another, baby, and I really hope that everything, it worked out and you will show prudence against you being delivered from pregnancy. I stared at the stranger with whom she lived. I seemed to have been perceiving hearing for so many years what he said, but there is no consciousness. What nonsense. Vadim did all this. Dark forces forced him to create. After all, this happened even before that. How Glasha Evdokimov came to me not. I was counting on the fact that I would ever sell about his second family, and knowing that he and his second wife are about to. The child was deliberately trying to be born, to make me pregnant as well, and if it turned out to be a disaster, I'll have to take that sin on my soul, which other women are not capable of. Forgive yourself to the end of your days. You are in your mind, Vadim, that's all that. I managed to squeeze myself out because this phrase could not have been more appropriate and contained all those clarifications in thee, which I still needed. Only madness. Evdokimov, which suddenly happened to him. It could have happened at least partially to justify the game that he did. Lisa, dear, forgive me, Vadim. So suddenly he rushed to me to drink. On my knees and grabbed my legs that I was taken aback and froze. Not mine. Statue. To hell with him. With the house. You're right. He's right. Only yours. This is perfectly fair. But tell me that I have a chance, that our child has a chance. I will no longer. I'll be with Glasha. She'll give me such a concert. She rolled herself in shock. She no longer knows. Do you need me in such an aha? And it means to me, Evdokimov's opinion. Let him keep his pocket. Wider Vadik, let me go immediately. I also clung to only the other part of the unfaithful husband, namely, the hair on the back of his neck. You told me that. You are perfectly aware of who you are with. It was for a quarter of a century that stop. These productions of theirs in the style of the village. Fools, where did you get these rural tricks? If my words somehow, the origin of reason. This was not immediately shown by some. He sat like that for a while, holding me by the legs and ignoring the fact that he is surely hurt by my attempts to tear him away from me later. Lived. I am very guilty of admonishing Liza Lizanka. But without you, my life will be empty. You and Leonya is my mainsaya, and Glasha Varya and future baby. Spare me. Understood, Lord Vadik. Let me go, and enough of these concerts. Not without a strenuous struggle I succeeded. Release. I went to the table at which, and she arose that I might sit among me. In the middle of Evdokimov's office there was at least some kind of obstacle. You offered to talk. In a normal way. Let's talk, I pointed out. On the couch in general, I'm already up to my neck. There were enough of the ideas that today I not only looked, but also in who were directly involved. If there is an opportunity to end the conversation on some more or less sensible note, I wish her. Take advantage of the first child. I don't plan to leave it. It's enough for me, Lenny. I assure you, today I am going to the doctor and I will be with. Find out if I am pregnant and what to do. Further, and thank you, Evdokimov, for that in the 43rd year of your life you, through such a hormonal shake, I started to get mad when before me. Belatedly, it came to me that he could. Vadim did so. These thoughts were necessary. Throw it away until I'm at mine. Gyneko, there is no point in harassing when you do not have anything. I understand the second. Let's discuss the section. Property house, as you rightly said. Quite rightly, I got it. Now about the apartment, I know that you accumulated huge debts in order not only to support his second family, but also allow yourself cute pranks in the form of weddings with Glasha you gave them, or to the giant amount. His jaws clenched and on his cheekbones, and Vadik's cheeks began to get angry. And look, he will go to return. Attack. I solved these issues myself, Lisa, were the money I earned on. Country now. He was looking at me, dark into the eyes in which a bright signal, don't go where you don't, sagged. That is, you forgot about the family code, which states that the Supreme Court jointly Acquired property includes money for. Sorry for the fact that I switched to a more. The language you understand is shared with the same wife with, to which you are registered. Officially, Vadim was silent only, incinerates his. Victorious, everything is clear, so I think it will be. It is even more fair if the apartment is in. That we live now will go to me, and you will start a new life with your beautiful Glasha, your children, Leona. After all, you don't have to pay alimony, so. No one on your income after divorce. Claim not? As soon as I finished speaking, I realized that it was. Impossible. Evdokimov will not agree to this. Never, if only because he will. It seems that in this way he will be able to. Vadim slowly got up, and, putting his hands in his trouser pockets, he began to walk, back and forth in the office in his brain. Surely there was such an intensified. The work of thought that I didn't even care. Nothing good for myself from this person no longer. You were waiting for the right Lisa from me and my company. Large debts, loans that I took, and I extinguished it quite slowly, so I insisted that the borrower under. Lenya became a mortgage on the house. Otherwise you would have done everything. I found out a long time ago he moved there, back as if. So let's make a deal. You're giving birth. Of this child, he pointed to my belly and I do not claim that all debts. That I did, we shared after. Divorce, no half of the 3-part on them. Not enough. Lisa and you are right altogether. Acquired, including debt obligations, is also shared. Equally, if I thought that in front of me. There was a stranger now, Vadim. He managed to impress me even more. In a matter of moments, he changed his mask as in Suchansky, what have you done to our family after spending on his collective farm such huge sums? You are also blackmails me. I found the strength in myself to strain back. You threaten me that you shake more money from me in addition to those who have already managed to take to the side of the family budget, so that I and Petit from my pocket for the maintenance of your villages. Shocked by how the armed forces turned out. Evdokimov was so huge that I didn't even understand where the bottom was from which he will be able to push off and end up on the swamp surface. Is there a bottom in the principle, or this level Vadim has already safely passed Lisa? I just really don't want to. For you to kill an innocent child. Evdokimov, having changed his commanding appearance, and the tone of the MTO was similar with emotions. This. Why did you need it? I asked a question that was completely. Obviously, I sincerely don't understand you. There is an adult son, an adult daughter on. Approach another heir. Why do you need? I needed another child from. My husband stepped towards me, but I put it out. I will put my hand in front of me if necessary, run from him around the office, around the table. But it is not possible to approach oneself. I'll give me a cape without you of my life, Lisa, with, Vadim said hotly. You have always been for. I was somehow sublime, unattainable. Such. Weightless, he said this, and I. Frowns. Nonsense, I was the most ordinary for you. A good wife, Evdokimov, a man, who looked not at you, but at the same time. Sighed of you and very much counted on it. That this will be enough for you, that we, armhole hand in hand, we will sing to each other, and you are the sun this time. He also relied on another. I got tired of sinking into a chair. I squeezed the bridge of my nose with my fingers. It was all too exhausting. I could not do without it. Everything was already clear to me. The husband just turned out to be an unscrupulous nom who has a double life. The game is assigned to him and tack played. That personally I would not have guessed about the World Championships. Not. Come to me. Glasha, in short, let's summarize again. Everything turned out as it happened, but no. I will not share my debts with you. The lawyer will prove that this money flowed out from the family budget, so I will. Also demand compensation for the rest. We found out everything, Vadim. You are free. Go to my second family. I'll see you in. Court, pretending to be carried away by work, although I didn't see anything on the screen at all. Laptop that I opened. Look at my husband, and he was standing in a couple. meters away from me, and I felt it on me, burning. "Look, I'm waiting for your prudent." "Lisa," he said quietly as, "just go to the doctor. Write to me and you." I heard me. I hope Vadim came out, and I exhaled, with such relief as if he had just unloaded a wagon of coal, and now I managed to finally do. Break, I would rather have a visit. Gynecologist. Well, there is no pregnancy. The doctor spread her hands after the examination. I did not. Began to go into the details of the whole situation I just told Elena Yurievna about. Their suspicions, they say, after the honey. Months with my husband delay, and I feel like broken, so this delay may be, is due to the fact that I am going through menopause soon. I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. Went to sit down at the table opposite Elena Yurievna. She looked at me and corrected me. Glasses, and sighed, Evdokimova. I've already. Many times in a row I spoke with fertility. You're all right, and your age. Not criminal to give birth to a child again. You just need to relax. And about menopause. Forget about it for the next 10 years. As if she began to write something, and I was. The thought of VDG came to my head. The delay is associated with what exactly he poured in my tea. Vadim Elena Yurievna, and it can be that I have some kind of failure due to the collection of the herbs that I drank, I checked with. She frowned and looked at me so that I felt under the X-ray. I don't remember you. I prescribed something feminine that. I felt uncomfortable with the fact that it was. Elena Yurievna could think of me. I was pregnant, that I was already ready. Resort to folk. Methods you did not prescribe, I myself muttered. In response, she shook her head and resolutely said the collection is canceled and Evdokimova, you're a young lady. Reasonable, but she must understand that all. These fees are only under the supervision of a doctor. Should be used, you never know what is there. I don't put it. I know I didn't know either, but to call with such a... Vadim could have poured nonsense into my tea. The last thing I will do, although it may be, it would be worth it for her to be convinced once again. As much as Evdokimov wanted from me. Child, while these examinations pass. Do an ultrasound, but nothing special. I don't see anything catastrophic in the delay with. I see you are completely healthy, she stretched out. I have taken several directions, which I have taken. She got up from her seat, and when she said goodbye to and appointed a new appointment, left the consultations and could not even resist. Smile. My soul was at least partially relieved. Thank heaven I did not, pregnant if someone had recently, said that it would bring me such a joy. I would not believe it, but how? Turned out to be not only Vadim, but also life. Could change masks at speed. Light home, I returned to the state of such euphoria that I even have legs. Weakened, I had no idea what happened to me. I would tell me Elena about pregnancy. I would, to the certainty of what to leave. Child by no means but glory. God was the first to resolve everything by itself. In fact, I threw away all the packages of tea, which I brought last summer from the south. There were several of them because this one, I used the drink what is called on. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I left only the one at a pack from which I took and brewed tea. For the past few weeks, but avoiding any misunderstandings in the trash. Other packages were sent even. Not sweat, but here is the collection that I hid. Farther into the kitchen cabinet, to submit somewhere for examination in order to understand what it was that dried and gave out. Vadim is a sorceress. Glafira, when I received it on my phone, a message from Evdokimov with the demand. Answer the question that with the child I did not. I found nothing better than to block. This contact to hell with Raspiand. I don't talk about my visit to the doctor. Neva after Evo. Frankness when I come to the... We'll talk to ourselves, but only after. I myself will be ready for conversation, and then thinking about it, it is not worth it. Should I leave home for at least a week, having previously made sure that both? Without my participation, the lawyers will cope with me. I went to the shower when I was standing under the warm water. Turned out to me that it washes everything away. I understood the bad thing that happened to me, that this is a state when I was able to convince myself in the fact that it doesn't hurt me so much anymore. Managed to survive the terrible betrayal. This is only a defensive reaction of the psyche later. I'm going to get overwhelmed, but now I'm grabbed the sensations as if already stepped over moral suffering. Now I will go on in life without Vadim. And not only will I walk confidently, but I have. Behind your back, wings will also grow from that. Free with these thoughts, I'm done. Water procedures, wrapped a t-shirt on damp hair with a towel, and went out of the bathroom and immediately gasped when he almost ran into an unknown man who stood in my hallway and looked around from, as if he did not understand how in general, I found myself here. Oh, that's all I could give out, holding. The towel is still in my head, Roy. Thoughts flash through my mind about whether there are thieves. I know stupidity so decently dressed. But for some reason, the brain at the moment of extreme degrees of surprise showed mental abilities in this direction. In the evening, you are Elizabeth, I said hello. A man stretched out his hand to me. I am David the father. Eugenia, with whom your son Moms, this is the same deputy about which Zhenya spoke, but how was he here? Turned out to be my daughter, and Leonid let me in and ran to the store to buy something for dinner. If you do not feel comfortable receiving us today, then we won't come another time, he said, while I mechanically lived David's hand. From the outside, it probably looked very. It's funny, I'm confused. One hand on head, the second holds a man's palm, and, on the contrary, unfamiliar until this moment. The man who shakes my hand and something tells, of course, it is convenient for us, I said, and was embarrassed by how it was. It sounded strange, or rather, it was convenient for me. Please come in, I pointed out in side of the kitchen, finally releasing his palm. David did not warn me, so I would. I got ready, came up with something for dinner. As I spoke, I began to rush around the room. My son could not have set me up. I knew that we had guests in our house. They don't take from the bay at all. Don't worry, they went for a bottle of wine, and fruit is not needed. No feasts, Lisa said softly. From kitchen David, while I was hastily trying, put on at least something decent, instead of a homemade stretched beloved. T-shirts, you don't think usually I'm like that. I don't meet guests. Dress, shirt, and I even liked it, David declared, and in his voice was heard satisfaction tinged with notes. Smile. I also involuntarily smiled, dry, by laying them on the joint. Kitchen to my father. Evgenia Leonid said that you need help. I'm ready to help, just like that. And calmly, as if all I was doing was that every day I met with strangers, assistants in the most bristle issues. Said, David, Leonya talks a lot, I muttered, pointing to the table at which Dad to his wife. I was in no hurry to settle down until now. Apparently, tact did not allow him to do this. Do without an invitation, and I was like this. Is confused by our sudden meeting that. I completely forgot about the simple etiquette. Yes, it seems to be nothing special, Sky. Svi priza. Snow on your head, please sit down. Let's wait for the children, they promised to do it quickly. Bring something for the light. So we were both uncomfortable. David was uncomfortable with the fact that I came unannounced because I couldn't accept him with dignity. I had to. This is to be corrected by sitting opposite. David, I coughed and said, well, what did he tell? My son to you. Shoulders and answered only dry facts, but especially in all this I was interested, the egregious crime committed by the priest of the parish where Vadim was, and Glafira, and that's what I want to do. Understand, first of all, I need Only your consent that I intervened because the matter is quite serious and they need to be dealt with as much as possible. Rather, I was well aware of the what consequences will the Ministry of Defense bear? Accord. Such a bucha will rise that you will not touch. Of the Glafir family, she simply did not. I have a lot of connections. Elizaveta, television journalist, just. Acquaintance there indicated with a quick glance. Up, David, this priest must be punished. And necessarily with. Special effects, Zhenya's father smiled at a V. His bottomless blue eyes appeared. Crafty. Sparks, I think that you need to talk about such people, trumpet from all, so that no one even thinks of repeating the VD. This did not appear. So it was, so David said the right things. But I tried to try on which ones. The consequences will await me only. I understood for sure Vadim would be just in. Rage as I pondered from the hallway. The voices of Zhenya and the guys themselves were heard, fell into an apartment with 3 packages, products from which they apparently planned. Cook dinner. Oh, Mom, you have already met, asked. Leonid and he exchanged with Evgenia. With quick glances they pretended that. Nothing special. Well, it would be strange if. All this time David was standing in the corridor, and I walked around him in a circle without saying and. Words, Leonya grunted, rising to his feet. I put the bags on the table, and I began to put them. It looks like I'm young and decided to roll it up. Real dinner party here, vegetables. Expensive slicing and even. Caviar is some kind of holiday, I muttered. Squinted and shrugged his shoulders, and in response. From the guys there was a ringing. Silence. Mom, let's just cover and sit down. To eat, he said in a strange way. Leonya and I, suspecting something was wrong, replied, Okay, but if there is something, celebrate, talk about the occasion. David joined me while the youth. Shushu Kala in my son's room, my father and I to my wife, sporadically laid the table, made booty brody. Laid out slices, fruits and vegetables even. Champagne managed at least a little. Cool by placing it closer to the freezer. And when Leonya sat down at the table, David and I opened the sparkling drink, looked at each other again in bewilderment at the. That Father Evgeny knew exactly as much, as long as I did not have any doubts. In general, I offered Eugene and she. Agreed, and now David Alexandrovich, I ask you for your hand. Daughter Leonid, who pronounced these words with so concentrated serious, that I couldn't help but smile like a fool when I looked at my adult son, and when she turned her gaze to David, her eyebrows. Mine lifted up, it seemed that Zenya's father. I don't like this offer at all, nor my son in principle. While a storm was rising inside me, expression on David's face. He has become completely different. Said Lion, you know what I have. There is so much left. Eugene, the words that David pronounced, sounded, muffled from somewhere in the underworld. I was not aware of what happened there in the past, but you could hear how hard it was, and it is sorrowful for David to speak now of. This. Just don't be in a hurry. I'm in a hurry for mine. The girl will stand up like a mountain if anything to argue with. You don't want to do it at all, especially after. How I met your mother, he and I continued awkwardly. Cough, Dad, I know everything and I have you. The best, Eugene exclaimed. Put down the glass, she jumped up and rushed. David awkwardly pulled her around his neck. With one hand, but Leonya very much. Loves, I grew up in a family where I was. Adored, I know what it is when the feeling. The real, she said this, and I involuntarily. I remembered myself as a young girl, who also spoke enthusiastically about the Vadime, and was sure of his love for as long as 25. Years in a row, but Leonid was not his father, and I. I knew that if my son decided something, it was. Well, if he loves, David replied, and looked at me again with the sly reflections that made him. A crystal look of some kind. Amazing if he loves you, then we. Elizabeth bless you with truth. Lisa, I nodded and smiled even wider, and Leonia, having uttered a victory cry, rushed to me. Probably for the sake of such things it was worth it, pulling yourself out of the quagmire of pain after. Betrayal, after all, life went on. No matter how you slice it, it was CRT just. Lash Mikhailovna gave birth beautifully. Grumpy grandmother living in the far. At the end of the village caused nothing but surprise Glafir with his fellow villagers. Mom tried to communicate well. From childhood she taught her that a bad world is better, and not a good quarrel, so Glasha pretended to be. He is friendly and hospitable even there. Where all sorts of money don't do this. Deserved love Mikhailovna the good. Day she greeted her neighbor, but she quickly disappeared into the house, as if. Glafira was a leper. Something hit the old Korje on the head. The sun spoiled the mood, but it was beautiful since Vadik called, and he said that he would come, did not talk. Avoid answering the question of why he. It turned out to be so evil that my husband suspected, as if it was the fool Lisa who could get rid of. From the child of Glasha, of course, this was only. She was very angry with Vadik for the fact that he has been circling her all this time, but the judgment is based on how it behaves. Lipi was not going to, and it will be fine. Now Glafira has a normal husband who will take her as a spouse for all. Laws with such thoughts she approached. The gate of the house returning from the regional hospital, and when I saw that in front of, there is an ambulance at the gate. Glasha's heart beat fast, fast that. She was gone for 3 hours. Holding her stomach, she jogged to the house on the Rye, then in, sat at the table, pale as a canvas. Father, and opposite him is a doctor who, when he saw his daughter, the father jumped up and, shaking his fist, he cried out, disgraced. Disgrace the whole village you have seen. I saw Kirill Ara, what kind of? Shame, he shouted and shouted, some kind of. Individual words and phrases, and Glafira, sinking into the first chair he came across with. I realized with horror that something terrible had happened. The doctor began to exhort the father, said something about the mother with whom apparently, and Chris was shaking, she should not worry, and she is very sensitive to the fact that. Say, people dad what happened, Glasha decided that will have to it despite the most. A vulnerable position becomes a support, especially since most likely something had happened to have to do with her. Marriage, what happened, what happened? You ask, his father began again with fervor, but Glafira, rising his. Tell me calmly, I need. Understand what our family is facing. She deliberately spoke in such a way that the old man understood they are all in the same boat. First of all, because they have kinship. One channel our watch Kirill in. The church came to ask about you. They say that the situation with your wedding reached him up there. Poked his finger at the ceiling, they are already tearing and throwing. Like such stories are undermined anyway. Trust in the church is still publicly wanted. To blame Kirill, and he is what he is. He did us good then, so that we were given to expand the garden and the man. What? A good dad, clutching his head, began to. Looking ahead of her, and Glasha froze from horror if we are talking about the channel, so it's that. It turns out that television has already connected. Everyone knows their situation with Vadik, but he. Why is he silent as he left since then? As they quarreled and not. All I call Evdokimov, she decided. That with her mother to the hospital. They take her away. She rushed into the room. Parents, where I saw the picture of which I was afraid since childhood my mother was lying in bed, neither alive nor dead while she was being done. Some kind of injection last time like this. The attacks almost sent her to that world. We pick up, yes, the pressure is very high. We'll take you to the city. We'll keep it on control, explained the doctor who had previously was with his father. He came after Glasha too. Room where he commanded. The others went, then turned to Glafura that stood, and it is necessary to break in your position about. She nodded mechanically to the child. How to focus on pregnancy here. When this is happening, as if in Lasha, watched my mother being carried out of the rooms are then put on a gurney to bring to. Soon how angry she was at this bastard. Lizaveta, the snake under the deck, decided from divorce from Vadik to put on a real show, where it will be white and fluffy and all around. Good people will suffer, and that's it why. Because Evdokimova is so simple. Do not let go. I wanted when my mother was taken away, Glafira decided. Pull herself together, mom things. Follow to the hospital, and that's it. We'll settle down to convey what is required by A. If he is allowed to see Zhenya, she punished too. I stayed next to him and calmed him down when he left. Still forced herself to look at Tot, the most broadcast of it so far, only to their regional channel, but Glasha already began to fear how this story did not leak further, and when her hands are all. They reached the point of dialing the number. It turned out that Vadik did not do this. Evdokimov came to her himself when Glafira saw her husband's car at the gate. At first, I forged it, and then I got scared. What if he says now that they are bigger, not together because he has this scandal, did not give up at all, and that raising a child with. He will not only pay alimony, pay later. She realized that Vadim will definitely not leave his daughter he loves, and son will also love them despite the fact that there was no delight from his appearance. I tested my mother in the hospital of Ukrzaliznytsia. She said to Vadik in the first Q that could switch it to more serious matters, after all, even if I came with the fact that Glasha would not like it. The news that she will give him for sure will force him to accept at least some. Devil. Evdokimov swore and, approaching the shop near the house, he sat down on. I've come to talk to her, he said, and I looked at Glafi once. Strange, their last meeting so far. She did not stand before my eyes then, restrained herself and told him that at all. Does not understand whether he will be able to accept him like this. Glasha believed that he did not live with his wife as a spouse, and he is not only lived, but they had whole honeymoons with Lisa in bed. We're talking, she shrugged her shoulders, and you. Everything inside me turned upside down with fear. Vadik she loved and did for their marriage. Vis, what could Aisha when his wife is definitely ought? Firewood must only be done correctly by the son, and Evdokimov will be her in its entirety, and completely. Lisa seems to have had an abortion. The doctor said that there was no pregnancy. No, and there wasn't, but I don't believe her, so from I will not have a wife and a second child. Glafira nodded, strenuously restraining herself. The very exultation that has never been soothed. It turned out that I thought that she was a sin. She will take this one upon herself. Suddenly he got up and came close to her, a little carelessly, but still caution. Pulled, Glashka as abnormal, but she to rush to show feelings to the side. My husband did not become at my girlfriend's again, and two, I have never seen the best of all this horror. Glasha sobbed, and Evdokimov pressed her to the more cramped for yourself. Even if we are debunked, this is nonsense. We'll go right after my divorce. We will get married, he promised her, and again. I will take you to church only now. For real. He moved away a little, took Glasha's face by the chin. She couldn't even restrain herself. Dropped. A tear has so disgraced us here, Vadik. Closed her eyes and shook her head at the entire shelf is now weakened. Che replied. They'll talk to you decidedly nonsense and stop. In general, we will probably move to the city. Only with my wife will I solve the issues of real estate house. I will try to sue A. If it doesn't work, I don't care. Half of the apartment is there. He smacked her in. Nose, and taking him by the arm, he led them to the house. There was a lot to discuss, but already one thing was clear. Vadik now belonged to Lasha. She completely won the news that Evdokimov filed a lawsuit. Claim for recognition of a gift transaction. Invalid took me by surprise. I was contacted by Vadim's lawyer, who offered me to meet and discuss situation, and I was like this. I am confused by the fact that my husband, in principle, could, in these circumstances, to come up with such a, that I didn't even understand how to do it. React, should we be afraid that this house may become at least partially mine, or we should back it up to the fullest? Program, my lawyer convinced that Vadim will not be able to challenge the transaction, but I. No, and allowed the thought, and what if? What if something goes wrong and I lose? After all, if at least part of this housing. If Evdokimov gets it, I will only get. Object with a bunch of problems when we start. Naws. Without the prospect of meeting at a common, I roughly understood that. It was that made Vadim go to this. Step at the next Primo Huse found out that she was visited by Evdokimov, who very demanding and insistently asking, answer the question, did I have an abortion or? And when the doctor sent him away, assured that there was no child, Vadik did not believe it well, judging by his reactions to Elena Yurievna's words, which she saw when Evdokimov left. I had some good news, which, however, if they painted my everyday life, then only partially with my analyses, was in perfect order, and those herbs that found in the collection, the doctor called conditionally harmless, but phytotherapy it. I didn't perceive it as science in principle. That's why she just wrote off my symptoms. That appeared as a result of the acceptance of the fee for individual feature. Lisa, you definitely feel good. I heard a worried, the voice of David, with whom we dined afterwards. Long working days, Father Zhinya Prosto came for me, just said me too. A couple of hours and just UVs to a restaurant on bank of the river, and I sitting with him at a table. I understood that it turned out to be exactly that, place and at a time that could be, to call it only a word. Successful, yes, I feel great. Smiled at David, drank a sip of wine. Just a little out of place because of what he smelled. Vadik, well, there is nothing special about it, shrugged David, if you're. The husband decided not to fight for such a woman. How? You don't think he even did it? Compliments pronounced in an even voice. The words sounded basically like a given. However, when I heard them, I blushed. Like a maiden in marriage. I'm afraid that in this case Vadim is just wants to guess to wrinkle me. She didn't want to be in the house at such moments, but it turned out by itself.
That we are talking about you and yours.
Divorce as if reading thoughts, he said. David, it would be strange if your thoughts were packed with something else. I immediately. I shook my head. I still didn't have enough to allow Glau and Vadim to go where it was so good and calm for the first time, for a long time. There is no time to talk about them. It is not worth talking about them. Tell me better about yourself, I asked my father. I didn't know much about NM except the fact that he was a deputy in the past. He had only one daughter. There is not much to tell. David answered. He was married, the wife of Eugene's mother. A climber died in the mountains. She is with me. There was bitterness in that smile that turned. There was almost no David to me, only warmth. What happens in relation to people already, to those who have departed from us, but to those who shall live in. Memory always, and with the departure of which the heart. She will not let you in right away, but she resigned herself. And so I am fond of fishing and traveling. I do a lot of housework with my hands I love. To carpenter a whole workshop, organized well like. It turns out that he shook his head and some. He was silent for a while, after which he added, quoting, famous. A movie character, I'm very perfect. I also succeeded, smiling and enjoying, with every moment of this evening. In tone, nothing life will fix it after. That we both have fun, laughed at her room and sobbed. Some girls from the village above her. Today the father of Glafira was also amused. He locked himself in the attic, where, as he suspected, Evdokimov applied to the reserves of his. Glasha suffered from training, contractions, and Vadim tried to call out to daughter so that she unlocks it, and with him. I talked, then I went up to my father-in-law and pounded on the door, then timed the time between. Contractions, although Glafira still had to give birth. Very early, at last, when his hand itself. I reached for the bottle he took. Solution, they will go to the city and will. Spending time in his apartment will cause. Lisa Mitov will be great for the night they will become. To return to the village of A in the morning again. No light dawn to arrive in there. Elizabeth, and when Leah ill gets tired. Such a great life they are, Samet. He and Varya Glasha were newborns. The baby will be in excellent city housing, where they will settle and start a new life. In the distance of these rural gossip and other things. Tripe, so get ready, and you and Varya, he said decisively to Glafira when I'm tired of rushing between three lights for. Vadik did not worry about the father of the Glasha, but, oh, my wife put it so I had to run. Back there but for. His daughter in the regiment was on good. Counting among the youth, and here damn Lisa. Almost spoiled everything, but nothing Varya in. The city will like it much more, and there she will surely have to go to court. Where Glasha did not understand this, who? Half lying on the sofa in the living room to the city. Tomorrow morning we get up and ride. He sat down. Next to his wife, he laid her legs on his knees, and looking into her simple face at which the given expression appeared. I added, I have an idea we will slowly move into my apartment if I was ready to let Vadim go in peace, and debts that he incurred on the condition of that Evdokimov will leave me and Leona apartment and go off into the sunset. Now everything was. Otherwise, a serious battle awaited, which my husband had started and I was going to. This battle is also to be fired from all guns. Let the judge demand to raise the documents. The ins and outs of Evdokimov's trad in general, and, in general, let everything be as much as possible now. We will sit in plain sight and calculate that. And how much was spent by Vadik to the side, and then he will return it to us. Oh, that I did not have any of this at all. I have earned for 25 years of my devotion. I tried not to think self-pity, the last thing that will help me in this. Situations are next to those people who will be with me to the end, and this is the same. And, support lion, you don't stop me. Surprise, I said to my son who drove in, for me to work, and then he took me to store where we chose for half an hour. Products for proper bolognese. Cook with mom for 2 hours. Authentic recipes. I shook my head and, the son smiled probably in this way, expressed his love and care for me. The routine of cooking dinner with which I was going to do it when I got home. Now we are sure have a lot of fun and stained ships and showdowns with. Vadim, well, I also have my own reason for this. I have, Leonia replied, I park at. Entrance, I will learn at least a little culinary before marriage. He got out of the car and began to take out. Products from the trunk, and I froze when saw Vadik's car, which was standing a little farther away from the house, beat my heart very fast because nothing good. From Evdokimov's stay at our home. At best, there was no need to wait. He will be alone, but even then they are waiting for us. Endless bickering at worst. Vadik brought his second family here after their dirty deeds became public information about the priest, that he married the Glashi, and Vadim was subjected to. My husband and I did not see each other, but I suspected that the meeting with him was nothing. There is no good thing to speak. We'll become mom, don't worry, we'll figure it out. The son said gloomily when I came out of the car. He also saw his father's car because of the. In a moment, Lenya's floor will disappear about dinners. And authentic bolognese could be safely. Forget, we'll figure it out, of course, she said. In response, calm, although everything inside raged, and the desire was just cowardly. Turning around and running away was like that. Palpable that I was even surprised at that ost, rea to the presence of Vadik instinct, self-preservation in the apartment we went up. Silently, I read a lot during this time of different, about such betrayals, divorces, and division of property women's Thomas's arrows, stories about that VH turned strangers. Sugi, who are a friend of lice because, when Leonia and I approached the door to the, I had an idea of the apartment, a certain base of what can await us with. Son, for example, changing the lock on the door, which Vadim and I will continue to do. Rearrange in a circle until someone, we won't get tired of it, or the presence of. Evdokimov's family and our dwelling to howl them. From there, it will be almost impossible to. The worst thing about all this is that it doesn't seem to be. The law was carried out by the law enforcement officers. I can't completely get rid of the Glasha. Will, Dasha el non vo, other people's shoes in the hallway neatly. There were shoes that most likely belonged to Varya, the daughter of Evdokimov, and next to the worn-out ballet flats are a little bigger. They were apparently worn by the future mother, she herself. Leaned out of the kitchen and melted into that. Smile that I've already managed to. Hate only this time she was so artificial that Glaffire. Theatrical talents would be the envy of us. Even the most famous acres of O-Face. Dinner with ruffle cooking, come on, Glasha said in such a tone as if the absolute norm was the fact that Vadik's second wife met the first. Hot. With a meal where my father is, Leonid strained. I followed him so that, to understand the scale of the catastrophe that happened here in our absence in the shower, Dad gave a voice from. Of course, I recognized it at once, although in the photo Ko demonstrated her. Glafira, Vadik's daughter, was much younger, and who else could, to bring with him from the village his second wife. Hello, Lenya. I'm your sister. The girl continued to speak, dropping her lesson. She cut vegetables for salad and, now putting down the knife, she got up from the table and approached the Leonid. Felt good about all this. Rehearsed plays after the fact that our initiative happened in their village of the last day as they would have become. Treat me, Glasha, her daughter, with absolute acceptance, but apparently by their idea, they were supposed to be completely cute whites and fluffy. What's going on here? I went to attack, standing up in such a way as to be between Varya and completely confused Leonya. What kind of games in general? Collective farm? I pointed to the slab on which Glafira cooked food godlessly, using metal spatulas in a pan with non-stick coating. Lord, this is what I've got to sit here now. Cerberus, forgetting about work and guarding pots from encroachments. What is happening is that my wife and mine daughter came to visit me. Vadik's voice rang out from the bathroom apparently. He was already getting out of the shower and heard my This question is not prohibited by law, and even if you start talking about some 23, the hours before which the guests must depart, call the police if they come okay. They will not be able to pour out a pregnant woman. They will write a fine. I will pay it well, even if make them leave. We'll be back in the morning. Again, he went into the kitchen, stood next to Varian, added, so I suggest you, or live like this, or go to the house. Well, or he, looking at each other, it's fair if we are there to sing with Glasha. Cook with a baby who is about to be born, with which she was going to send Vadim to a distant journey. The word was taken by the son of Bud. To think that when you are Vadim Sergeyevich. Did you pay off the loans? At least partially? Returned what they stole. Leonya, who was on fire, looked at his father with righteous indignation, aggression that spread around the kitchen scarlet. You can continue the book in our full audiobooks at the link in the description, profile, or by following the link in the comments.